It's common sense to avoid walking in a bad neighborhood while flaunting expensive jewelry, leaving valuables on your car seat, or pulling out a bunch of cash in public. These are just simple things we all do to lessen the risk of being robbed. But in 2024, people have decided to ignore this common sense and instead open themselves up to a much wider audience of opportunists. I'm of course talking about social media. There are many factors that play into this, but the biggest one is flexing wealth. If you were wealthy in the years before social media, there was an inherent protection of crimes requiring a spur-of-the-moment decision, or someone who had an incredible level of access to your life. With social media though, people seem not only happy but willing to present themselves as that target and give that access to the world entirely for free just to flex.
If you ever want to achieve financial freedom, then you need to stop exchanging time for money and instead invest into assets that generate a passive income irrespective of the world marketplace.
In the first example, let's look at Kieran Hamilton, a Manchester-based and self-titled finance guru. Kieran posts a typical lifestyle of the finance influencer online, complete with millions of dollars in luxury goods like clothing, watches, cars, and property, but also a lifestyle of travel and general opulence. Embedded in these posts are the links to explain this lifestyle and how Kieran lives it. He claims he can teach you how to become as wealthy as he is using the typical methods: forex trading, YouTube automation, collectibles trading, property investment, and more. Now, whether he can do this or if he's earned money from it is not the point of this video. He's among thousands of finfluencer accounts on social media that make the same promises, and usually they make their wealth from selling this fake luxury lifestyle to gullible people as opposed to making money doing the things that they claim. Because realistically, if you were this finance guru who could turn hundreds into thousands into millions, you wouldn't need to tell anybody else, you just do it, and then if you really wanted to help people, you just give to charities. Charging people money to tell them how to make money is a little bit contradictory if you say that's why you do it in the first place. Either way, however he got the money or whether he has as much as he claims, posting about it all on social media is a double-edged sword, or should I say, a double-edged machete in Kieran's case. He woke up one night to the sound of smashing downstairs, thinking it was his French bulldogs fighting as usual. Then he heard footsteps on the staircase of his new home. Within minutes, Kieran was face to face with two machete-wielding intruders. They told him exactly what they wanted, and those were the things he was bragging about on social media, such as watches, cash, laptops, and more. After a few punches and a bit of stabbing, they took what they could and left the house. Unfortunately, what they could get at the time was one of his dogs, but at least as a happy ending to this story, he did get the dog back about a year later. Now obviously Kieran was targeted solely because of his social media posts he made specifically for attention, and attention is exactly what he got, though not in the way he would have liked in this case. Since then, he posts on social media less, but when it's part of your business model to sell the product of promised wealth to your audience, it's probably kinda hard to avoid. And now let's look at an example that shows you don't have to be some crypto influencer or finance guru, you can be a businessman who just so happens to associate with influencers or just individuals who like to post and brag on social media. So let's go back to March of 2023. A successful businessman from Vietnam by the name of Tran Dinh booked an emergency flight out of Sydney, a flight that he considered to be life or death. So what was it that scared Mr. Dinh? Well, luckily for him, he had advanced warning about a group of criminals that were out to rob him of his vast hoard of cryptocurrency. I say lucky for him, but this warning came at a hefty cost for his business partner, Peter Vuong, whose warning came in the form of being ambushed outside his girlfriend's house, leaving him with a broken eye socket. Unfortunately, this warning wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been, as 8 days after that initial incident, Peter woke up to the sounds of smashing glass and quickly found himself at the mercy of 6 armed men. Peter's influencer girlfriend, who frequently posted lavish pictures of their multi-millionaire lifestyle, watched as he was dragged away in the dead of night, wondering if she'd ever see him again. The very next day, Tran Dinh received communication from the kidnappers demanding $5 million making it clear they had his associate and that they intended to turn his whole body into many smaller pieces if the ransom was left unpaid. Not just that, but they sent pictures of Trandin and his wife's photo identification along with the ransom, directly threatening that if he didn't pay this ransom, not only would his partner turn into a jigsaw, it would be their turn next. Clearly, the kidnappers had prepared to target these high net worth individuals. This wasn't a random crime of chance. There was no spur-of-the-moment attack on someone who'd flashed a wad of cash, but a premeditated crime with substantial planning and study. Which again, obviously comes from social media and seeing the wealth and opulence that these individuals are living with. So as for what happened, well, Mr. Din did what I'm sure most people would do. He hopped on a flight and got the fuck out of there. Meanwhile though, his unlucky associate was tied to a bed in a nearby home that had been outfitted to look like something out of a spy movie, some kind of CIA safe house, and spent 5 days blindfolded having his teeth pulled out with pliers. Luckily, after those 5 days, the Australian police raided the house and saved him. Arrests were made and discoveries presented in court that reveal a deep plan of bribing employees to give up identification of the men, which was then used to set up this abduction. Now, I'm obviously not saying that these men deserved what happened to them, or any of the people in this video deserve what happens to them. That isn't the point I'm trying to make. What I am saying is that we're living in a new time altogether. If you're going to make money, generate status or attention by posting online, flaunting your wealthy lifestyle, you will undoubtedly find that some of that attention is going to be bad. There are people around the world who are struggling, and they see you as a piñata to be hit with a stick until the candy falls out. So the answer, if you are lucky enough to be wealthy, is to stop flexing it online. Obviously, in an ideal world, you wouldn't be the victim of crimes, but we all lock our doors at night for specifically this reason, because the ideal world doesn't exist. So you do need to take precautions. For Peter Wong, he was lucky that it ended with a few teeth removed and the plan required him to be kept alive. Obviously, some people are not so lucky, and some of those are going to be in this video a little bit later. But the difference between Peter Wong's situation and some others is a level of professionalism. The people who abducted him may have had a plan, but it wasn't a very good one, and they didn't execute it all too well. So let's examine the difference between a professional operation and an amateur one. We'll also keep it on theme with wealthy cryptocurrency businessmen. In 2024, this is a real thing that's been happening. For many years, let's imagine you were kidnapped. Ransoms like the case of Tran and Peter were the norm. They'd grab somebody, then ask a rich person to pay money for their return, and the reason this didn't work out most of the time is because bank transfers are usually heavily scrutinized when it comes to large sums of cash, and are controlled by centralized entities that can freeze funds, redirect them, or return assets once they're on the move. This whole process can take days, and it can take minutes to undo. But obviously in 2024 and a few years past, cryptocurrency exists, and people can be walking around with millions of dollars in their pocket. A simple face scan, a fingerprint on the mobile phone, and there could be sat generational wealth. That wealth can be transferred within seconds, anywhere on the globe, with zero scrutiny and almost no way to see it returned. So obviously this adds an additional level of risk to flaunting wealth online, especially in the world of cryptocurrency. If you have a Twitter account where you post about the millions you make and then people notice you in public, it's not just a watch that they're going to be snatching off your wrist. If they can get access to your phone, they could literally empty what amounts to your life savings within minutes. One simple example of this are reports of business executives being lured to fake meetings. They believe they're there for a nice meal, maybe a bottle of expensive wine and conversations about potential partnerships, but in reality, they're taken to a dark room, forced to open their phone, and send millions of dollars in assets, and if they're lucky, released without harm. This is an example that shows the difference between professionals and amateurs. An amateur might come into your house with a machete looking for a few watches or a few $1,000s in loose cash because they see you post on Instagram. A professional, they're going straight for the cryptocurrency accounts in your mobile phone. This has happened countless times and really illustrates the dangers of being a public figure with a high net worth in 2024, especially in that world of cryptocurrency. So what about when we combine three things? What about when we have cryptocurrency, an influencer flaunting his wealth online, and a personal vendetta? I'm sure that's a winning combination that will turn out just fine in the end, right? In the case of Aiden Platki, it all happened as you would expect. The 22-year-old Aiden decided to share his years of wisdom and genius level investing talent with the world. And somehow, this guy managed to convince hundreds of middle class and up adults to part way with anywhere from tens of thousands to millions of dollars. Aiden assured them all the money would grow quickly because he was, as his social media would show, the self-proclaimed crypto king. With this pitch, Aiden managed to raise in the ballpark of $40 million, all on the premise that he could simply make money multiply and had experience doing so. Which again raises the question, why would he need other people's money if he could do this when he'd just be a billionaire in the first place? But obviously that's a common sense reason to explain it. Unfortunately, when it comes to greed, people often miss the obvious and see the fanciful, because that's what they want. So Aiden was allegedly pooling the investor funds into his business account on a Belize-based cryptocurrency exchange and using that fund to make high profitable trades. But according to reports, no accounts in the name of Aiden or his business were registered to that exchange. Instead, he was allegedly using the investor funds to live out a high-flying life of a multimillionaire while refusing requests to return money to those who handed it over. Aiden was paying $40,000 a month to live in mansions, buying Lamborghinis, flying in private jets, and wearing watches valued at close to $1 million, all the while posting this lifestyle on social media. Unfortunately for Aiden, when you spend money that isn't yours and generate no returns, you build up a deficit that is often referred to as a Ponzi scheme. So eventually he was forced to declare bankruptcy, informing the many investors that their money was not only no longer growing, but no longer existed. Why it no longer existed was mostly down to bankruptcy records showing that nearly $16 million of the 40 was spent by Aiden while he flew around the world on private jets and lived like a true king. Meanwhile, allegedly making zero attempts to trade a single dollar of the $40 million he raised from the investors. So lawsuits were filed and investigations were launched, but obviously some people decided to take it upon themselves to try and retrieve the funds that they considered stolen. After all, if it was in cryptocurrency, they could probably just take it out of his hands. At first they made threats, and second, a group of men abducted Aiden. They beat him severely and then forced him to record an apology video.
I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't want to or mean to ruin anybody's life.
Which was later edited and sent to news outlets. This video would of course not be admissible as any form of evidence in any case of the missing $40 million, and Aiden was clearly, visibly under duress, making his statements impossible to take as truth. But obviously the people who abducted him felt that this was important. They were after all risking years in prison to beat a confession out of Aiden, as well as hoping to recover some of the missing funds during said beating. So fast forward to the future. As of now, the money hasn't been recovered. Aiden's still posting on social media, claiming now to be a quote, part-time pimp, streaming to kick.com and advertising for people to quote, make money with him. Clearly, being abducted and beaten didn't teach him the full lesson, but his recent posts are flaunting much less wealth, so maybe part of a lesson. Now I'm going to move on to the last example I'll give you of this, and it's a little bit grisly. On July 19th, 2023, Fernando Perez disappeared without a trace. Fernando was a self-made cryptocurrency influencer from Argentina with a net worth allegedly in the high millions. Fernando traveled the world, spending time in places like Barcelona and Miami, but it was during a week-long stay in Buenos Aires that he went missing. Traveling alone, it wasn't until he didn't turn in the keys for his rental property that anyone raised the alarm that something might have happened. It didn't take long for somebody to find Fernando, or at least part of him. Some local kids were playing football when they found a suitcase with a few pieces of Fernando inside. After police searched the area, they found the rest. The autopsy revealed he had been shot 3 times prior to what they called a professional job, cleanly turning the crypto influencer into smaller pieces. According to reports, Fernando wasn't just known for flaunting his wealth to his 900,000 and growing Instagram followers. He was also known by those close to him as having an issue with gambling, being in debt to the government for unpaid taxes, and taking loans from some less savoury elements of society. Police recovered multiple messages from Fernando's phone, where individuals were accusing him of owing substantial sums of money to them and their family members. One such message ominously said, "We will see each other face to face." So, while Fernando likely did much more behind the scenes that contributed to the result, I'm sure flexing and flaunting on social media while owing money privately didn't go down well with the people who were waiting to be paid. So these are just a few examples of people deciding to not only ignore the common sense of keeping a low profile, but they made it their entire lifestyle to post about where they were, what they were doing, and specifically what they have. While many people do this in a fake it until you make it style to lie to others and make it feel like they're living some lavish, crazy lifestyle that they're really not, to maybe enrich themselves from gullible followers, they end up making themselves a target either way, whether it's real or not. And considering the rise of cryptocurrency, we've also seen a rise of kidnappings of wealthy individuals who walk away with an empty crypto wallet, like having their bank account broken into, but without any of the difficulty or safeguards. In an ideal world, none of these things would happen, even if you were to show off what you had to those who didn't, but this should serve as a warning that doing so, not in an ideal world, is a stupid idea. Thanks for watching.